This is Joel Toppen and video number 3 of how to design VASSAL modules. In this video we're going to show how to insert pieces into your brand new VASSAL module. In our last video we showed how to insert the map graphics into your module, how to add the zoom functionality to the map, and what I'm going to do now is show you how to put the pieces into the map. By game pieces, what I mean is the counters. A lot of games are going to have cards, some are going to have counters. Many games are going to have both cards and counters, and this is how we'll go ahead and start inserting those. Cards are kind of a different animal, so we'll tackle that in a future lesson. What I'm going to show you how to do here is how to insert game pieces that would be like counters in an ordinary game. As you see here, on the if we go to the main folder of the VASSAL module in the editor window, you'll see that there's a help folder, the determine player size. We've taken care of all that stuff. Global options we're not going to mess with. Main map window, we talked about that last time. Game piece image definitions. This is a tool that can be used to create pieces in the VASSAL module. I prefer not to use that method. I don't find that method to be very quick, not terribly user friendly, so I usually completely ignore this function, although I have seen it used in some modules with success. But that's not a method I use, so I'm not going to teach it to you. Global properties are something we'll talk about. It's an advanced feature in VASSAL. We'll talk about that on another occasion. Prototypes are something we will get into, and they interact with game pieces in a way that's going to help you insert pieces very quickly and be able to make adjustments to your game pieces in a very efficient manner. So we're going to go into pieces. We're going to ignore the translations folder. We're not going to do anything with that. Instead, we're just going to use the pieces folder. And if we right click on that folder, we are given the little pop-up menu here. We can look at the properties of that folder. And the properties, we find the name of this folder is pieces. And if we want, we could change it to markers. I'm going to go ahead and do that here. And you'll see that changes to markers over on the toolbar. Ordinarily this says pieces. We've changed it to markers. When you click on it, a little vertical panel with a dot will appear in the center. On the left hand side of the VASSAL screen for the module, there will be a little dot on this panel, and if you just reach over with your mouse, you'll see the icon of the mouse changes, showing that if you left click and drag, you can expand that outward. Alright, there's still no pieces in there, but that's where the pieces will appear once we start creating them. Let's go back to the markers folder. We can have a tooltip text. When we hover the mouse over the markers button, it'll show us what's in this particular field. We're not going to change any of that. We can adjust the button icon at a later date, so we're not going to do anything with that for now. Okay, so let's go ahead and start putting pieces in this. When we right click on the folder for the game pieces that we've renamed markers, this pop-up menu comes up and we have several options. We can add a tabbed panel, we can add a panel, pull-down menu, scrollable list, single piece, multiple pieces, or an imported class. And we're not going to mess with imported classes. That's highly advanced stuff that we're not going to get to. Now, we're going to add a single piece in this thing, and that's like fifth from the top here. So let's go ahead and select that. Game pieces have traits, and within traits there are properties. Every trait that a game piece has also has one or more properties associated with it. So when you create a new piece, the properties for that piece, that window is displayed immediately, showing you a pull-down menu, a scrollable menu of available traits that you can add and or remove to that piece. You'll see on the right-hand panel there is a scrollable list of current traits. Any new piece is created with the default trait of basic piece. You can't have a piece without that trait. That's the most important trait of the piece, is its basic, the basic piece trait. If we want to add other features to it, we can select over here by left clicking and choosing the add button, and that will add that particular functionality to the piece. For example, if I add a delete command, it'll add this particular functionality to the game piece. It'll show us the properties of that trait. In this case, the delete property has a command name and a keyboard shortcut. So if we want to add that, we just go ahead and click OK, and voila, it's in the list. If we need to remove a trait, you just select it here in the current traits panel and use the remove button to remove that trait. Okay, well, let's go ahead and look at the basic piece trait by double clicking on it, or you can click the properties button. I just find it easier just to simply double click. And then we double click in here in this little box. It says double click here to add new image. That's where we're going to click to go ahead and put our graphics that we've already prepped into this. So I double click there and a file browser appears. And I've got to take my web browser here, or my file browser, and I need to navigate to the image of the game piece I want to put in here. And I'm going to go into this folder and I'm going to add a drought piece to the module. Game piece, the basic piece property, or trait rather, has two properties, an image and a name. So it's important to give it a name. We're going to give it the name drought. You can have multiple pieces with the same name, but you cannot have multiple pieces that have different images with the same file name. So make sure you understand that particular that particular thing about the module. Whenever you prepare your graphics, I mentioned it's very important. If you have two different images, they have to have different names. Every individual graphic has to have its own file name that's unique from all the others. But within the module, when you're creating a game piece in the module, you can assign the names much more liberally. You can have 5 markers with the same name drought. Okay, it's not going to mess things up, just so long as the file names are unique. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and click OK, and our game piece is just about set. We're going to add clone functionality to our game piece, so we'll just choose to add that, and we'll leave the default settings alone, and we'll click OK. And what do you know, there you have it right there. Our game piece is now in the markers panel. So if we click the markers button on the toolbar, it will hide it. If we click it again, there's that vertical panel. We can drag it out. Well, there we go. And it'll show us our game piece. All right, let me show you a few things about this. Let's go ahead and start a new game, and we'll show what this looks like on the map. There's our map. Now if we take our game piece and drag it on the map, you'll see it's been sized to fit the map perfectly. We did our homework in advance. If we right click on our piece, we'll see the clone functionality is there. So we can clone that piece and make multiples of it. However, you'll notice that there's no delete functionality. So we need to add that to that game piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the module open, and I'm going to show the editor window. Let's go and expand the folder for the game pieces. I'm going to select drought, double click on it. We see the clone functionality is there. Let's add delete functionality. We'll choose to select it, add, leave the default settings alone. If you want to change the keyboard shortcut, you can select in here, and you say you just want to use Shift D. You can do that, or you can just use the letter D if you wanted to. You could use the up arrow, down arrow, whatever button sequence you press, that's what it's going to do. I'm just going to use the Control D default. We'll select OK. Click OK again. Let's go back to our module we have open. Let's look at our game pieces on the map. Alright, let's find our drought markers. There they are. Let's right click on them, and you'll notice that the delete functionality is still not on that game piece. But if I take a new one out of the tray, put it on the map, right click on it, you'll see the delete functionality is there. If you add functionality to a game piece, it's not going to update it for any pieces on the map that includes any saved game files that you may have stored already. It only changes them in the core of the module, which is in the markers tray here. So any new pieces we drag out, it's going to have the new functionality, but the stuff we created before is not, because when we created those pieces on the map, those pieces did not possess that functionality. That's an important little thing to remember, especially when you're making scenario setup files. You need to make sure you make those files and that everything's correct before you save, because if you make any changes to the pieces, it's gonna mess up your scenario setup. Okay, so we've created our new game piece. We can test the functionality. Sure enough, delete works. I'll show you something else about this. If I right click on this this piece out here, you'll notice the delete is above clone. I like to keep my commands in alphabetical order, or at least in order where the most important commands are at the top. In this case, if I just have clone and delete, I would prefer if they were alphabetical in order. I'm just kind of anal about stuff like that. So how can I change that? Let's go back to the editor window, double click on our piece, and here's where it gets kind of odd. The trait that is at the bottom of the current traits window panel here, the bottommost command is going to appear topmost in the pop-up menu. It's backwards of what you would think. So if we want to reverse this, we'll just select the delete function, and we'll use the move up, and that'll put delete above clone in the current traits. We'll click OK. We'll go back to our window here. Now we right click on the piece on the map. Notice it didn't change because when we created this piece, the commands were such that the delete function would be at the top of the menu. Let's delete that piece. Drag a new one out. Right click on it, and what do you know? There's the clone on top and delete is on the bottom. Okay, so that's real simple to do, but the problem is we've got a lot of counters to put in here. How can we do this in a much more efficient way? Well, a lot of times you're going to have to create counters one at a time, but one of the ways you can speed that up is using the copy and paste functions in the editor window. If we select the drought counter that we created, right click, you'll see that there's copy. And if you're using a PC, a Control-C will also copy. Once you've selected something, you can use Control-C to copy, Control-X to cut, Control-V to paste. Whatever your standard shortcut is for your operating system should work in here. If you're using a Mac, it's the Command-C, Command-X, and Command-V respectively. Or you can use the pop-up menu. In this case, I'll just use the pop-up menu to copy the drought counter. Now, to paste it, because the drought counter is subordinate to this folder, I have to actually select the parent folder, which is the markers folder. And if you're starting your own module, it'd probably be pieces unless you've renamed it markers as well. I select that parent folder, right-click, and now the paste function is enabled. I choose that, and there you go. I've added a new piece. I can go into that piece, double click on it. I can go into basic piece. If I double click on the image, it brings up the file browser, and I can add in, say, this counter here. I'll just call this one APs. Select OK. And there, that piece is now inside the module. Click OK. When we expand this little folder, you'll see that we have a drought counter and an APs counter. The problem is this is not the best way to organize your counters. There's lots better ways of organizing them. So what I'm going to show you next is how to organize those counters, and we'll do that in our very next video.